Hello, I'm Dr. Jamie Mathias, and I serve on the Board of Trustees of the Austin Independent School District in Austin, Texas, where I help to oversee a budget of $1.6 billion for the 80,000 students and 11,000 employees of our 100 public schools here in Austin. In my free time, I serve as Executive Director of MASBA, the Mexican American School Boards Association, one of the co-sponsors of today's conversation, together with our friends from the Texas Caucus of Black School Board Members and Leadership ISD. Today's theme is National Leaders Leading in Turbulent Times. And we have four tremendous national leaders joining us today, representing the National Black Council, the National Hispanic Council, the National American Indian Alaska Native Council, and the Council of Urban Boards of Education. So let's meet them. I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves in alphabetical order by surname, sharing with us their name, one sentence about their district, and their three favorite shelter-in-place pastimes. Ready? We begin with the chair of the National Black Council.
All right, well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon to those of you. My name is Devin Jones del Palacio, and let's see, one thing about my district. We're comprised of 7 schools, predominantly Black and brown schools, and we're home to University High School, which is ranked 20th by US World News in terms of academic achievement. 3 things that I do in my pastime, quarantine pastime, I'd have to say, well, 3 are my favorites. 1, spend time with my family and the kids. 2, try to get some exercise in to burn off all that quarantine weight. And 3, I would say catch up on some Netflix and just hang out and watch movies.
Tremendous. Devin, welcome. Glad to have you here. Next, we have the chair of the Council of Urban Boards of Education.
Well, good morning or good afternoon already to our friends. Know that we're getting a good turnout, not only statewide in Texas, but even now across the country. Thank you, Dr. Mathias, for putting this on. So Jacinto Ramos Jr., my nickname is Cinto. Everyone, please call me Cinto. Fort Worth ISD, super proud to serve on that board, and also as the chair of the Council of Urban Board of Education. Little bit of, or 3 favorite pastimes right now. 1 is golfing when I can squeeze that in. 2 is being out on my boat on the lake in Fort Worth. And 3 is definitely, as also Devin said, actually, let me flip that. 1 is going to be family time, and then golf, and then boating. Thank you.
Tremendous. Cinta, welcome. Glad to have you with us. Now let's meet the chair of the National Hispanic Council.
There we go. Thanks for having us on today. Just real quick about my school district, Canoteo ISD in El Paso, Texas. We have about 6,000 students, 7 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, 1 early college high school, and 1 high school. And we were back-to-back A-rated district, and we had a blue ribbon school. So tremendous, great things coming out of Canoteo.
Tremendous. And your favorite 3 social distancing pastimes?
I'll go with Devin. I think, being close to family, we know as, especially being on the NSBA board, a lot of this travel requires away from our family, and being able to be with our family is great. And then I would say the bed, being able to catch up on some bedtime, and then going outside and enjoying the backyard and getting some fresh air. So.
There we go. Thank you, Mando. Armando Rodriguez of the Canoteo ISD. Finally, let's meet the chair of the National American Indian Alaska Native Council.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Snyder. I'm a board member here in Fort Washakie, Wyoming. Our county, Fremont County, is actually got more land mass than Delaware. There are 9 school districts in our county, and we are one of 3 native-only boards on the reservation. We're surrounded, of course, by non-native districts, and a lot of our students actually go off the reservation to school. We just did our graduation for our high school on Saturday, got all of our students taken care of. I mean, the way we did it this year actually was a lot different than what we'd done in the past. With our new school buildings, we had an east-facing little place there on the front of the building. We were able to get our students lined up there, the board lined up there, and then the parents parked and sat in the parking lot. So keeping social distancing on the reservation, we're still at a stay in place order by order of the councils. So we're kind of working within those confines as well. And I work for the food distribution program here in Fort Washakie, Wyoming, which is a commodity program for the USDA, which means I haven't had a day off. So I'm still working, no stay in place, but when I get some spare time, I've got a shop out back with lots of projects. So work on those, get those up and running. Of course, carpentry and mechanics, just some things I'd like to do.
Tremendous. Welcome, David. Glad to have you with us. I often
you.
conclude conversations like this with a lightning round with quick rapid fire questions. Today, let's begin with a lightning round. Let's call it speed dating for those who might not be acquainted with your national organizations. We'll kick off this lightning round by asking our panelists to briefly speak of the history, membership, and leadership of their organizations. Devin, briefly tell us about the National Black Council.
Yeah. So the National Black Council is a council that serves as an advisory council to the NSBA on matters of policy and various programming issues. And in terms of its history, so I do want to share some history with you and how we kind of all got started. In 1970, NSBA hired its director of HR and Minority Affairs, 1970. And it wouldn't be until 5 years after that, in 1975, that a group of Black school members got together to form the Black Caucus. Now, shortly after that, the Hispanic Caucus was formed, and I'll let Armando touch on that. And throughout the decades, we've formed into the National Black Council. So the current Black Council definitely stands on the leadership and the sacrifices of those that came before us to establish a space for us to be able to advocate on behalf of the now 7.7 million African-American students in our public schools. And so, but really, we're just here to empower our board members to be the best board members they can be. And allow me to say this, that you can join the Black Council, you can join any of our councils. You don't have to be Black, brown, whatever. We welcome everybody. We want white folks to be a part of the conversation, to be able to get the resources they need to become the best board members they can be, ultimately for our students.
Tremendous. Thank you, Devin. Mando, briefly fill us in on the National Hispanic Council.
So Devin touched a little bit on the history, and so I wanted to talk to mainly about the primary purposes. One of my favorite is to promote the advanced equal educational opportunities for Hispanic children by council members, becoming actively engaged in national dialogue on educational problems, issues, and concerns in conjunction with the National School Board Association as other national organizations committed to the continued growth and development of minority children. So being able to sit as an advisory board to the NSBA board on issues that deal within the Hispanic community, and just go back to what Devin talked about, you don't have to be Hispanic to be on the board. If you do have Hispanic children, we appreciate you joining us, because as we continue growing our organization and addressing the needs of equity in the educational system of all children, we would appreciate your membership. So.
Thank you, Mando. Appreciate that. David, what can you briefly tell us about the National American Indian Alaska Native Council?
Well, the American Indian Alaska Native Council has been a council for about 4 years now. We finally were able to get a seat on the board at NSBA. Prior to that, we were a caucus, and I was actually the chair or the president at that time of that caucus. And that's been 6 years ago. It's been several years ago that I was. Currently, we're, right now working, again, like Devin had mentioned, being a voice for the Native students on the NSBA board to help give guidance, of course. And like I said, and I think but people took this to heart at the board meeting. I was like, you don't have to look like me to be on this council. Please join us. If you've got Native students, if you serve Native students or Hispanic or Black students, join us. We need everybody to be educated to understand where they're going or where we need to be.
Awesome. Thank you, David. And Cintho, tell us about CUBE, the Council of Urban Boards of Education.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. So the Council of Urban Board of Education, thank you for the history, Devin, allows me to just kind of talk about the benefits of membership. We're currently comprised of 108 school districts across the country. that are focused on urban challenges. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions is usually that we have to be the demonstrate school system. And the reality is that we've got urban districts of all different types. And I think that as the demographics continue to shift, we're going to continue to see more and more of those challenges that urban children have experienced. And so the benefits of what we do and how we do it is that we've been talking about equity since day one. We've been unapologetic about pushing on equity since day one. And now that equity is becoming part of the everyday conversation, we feel a need to continue to learn and grow in that space to make sure that we actually close achievement gap. You know, it's one thing to be able to define the gaps, achievement gaps. It's a whole nother thing to actually be able to close them.
Tremendous, Cinto. Appreciate that. Appreciate you talking about membership as well. The question that I have for you panelists is, go ahead and give us your pitch. Why should school board members consider joining any of your organizations? What is the value proposition, if any, and or what strength could we help to bring to your organizations by being members of your 4 national organizations? We'll start with you, Mando. Why should school board members consider joining the National Hispanic Council?
So one, I think the most important is connections to an expanded advocacy network, especially at a federal level, being able to understand those federal issues that are affecting our kids, and learning opportunities and networking. As many of my colleagues here on this panel can attest to, is that we're able to call each other and being able to see, especially now within this time that we have been with COVID, is what is your district doing? How can we share that information with our district, and how do we make better decisions for our community by having an expanded network that allows us to reach out and be able to bring in different ideas. I was thankful for some of the information that was being shared through the NSBA within our communities, and I shared that within our staff, and we were able to hold one of the graduations, actually both of our graduations, and that was from a blueprint that was provided to us by our colleagues across the country. And the other most important thing is being able to get issues on a timely, especially on a federal issues on a timely manner. We receive emails pretty much weekly in regards to some of the issues that are currently happening. We know E-rate is something critical, especially when it comes to connectivity and access to many of our kids, especially in our communities of color, which we're hoping we could hopefully get $4 billion extra to that area. And then some of the issues that we've worked in the past, which is, I'm sure you all are familiar as educators, is Every Student Succeeds Act, and NSBA played a pivotal role in regards to that, and being able to have a seat at the table and address some of the issues in regards to local control and repealing the No Child Left Behind Act. And then currently we're hoping that we continue to work for funding for IDEA, and that's something critical, especially for our special needs population. So a lot of these issues are important, but being able to have that network and being able to, whether it's through communication from NSBA or the networks that you build within these organizations to reach out, I think it's a great opportunity for anyone to join. So
tremendous. Appreciate that, Mando. Appreciate your advocacy on IDEA, IDEA, the Individual Disabilities Education Act. Looking for the reauthor of that these days. David, why should we consider membership in the National American Indian Alaska Native Council?
Well, you know, my brother Armando, he said it very succinctly and very well. You know, making sure that we have a great network of people, and you know, the school districts throughout the nation to be able to draw from. And again, the COVID thing was something that's, you know, we all needed. You know, we all had questions. You know, what are we going to do for graduation? How's this going to work? How's this going to look? And to be able to become more of a clearinghouse for that, to say, hey, yeah, you know, these guys have a great idea here. Let's try this. Or, you know, sharing some of the ideas that I'd heard throughout the state of Wyoming as to, you know, how people were getting things done. To be able to network with some of the other districts is throughout the nation, again, is just key to all of this. And to be able to, you know, promote that and to provide that to the membership is something that we definitely need to do. We've run into a student, actually I did. I was at a meeting for my office, and there was a young lady that had not been able to wear her regalia at her graduation. And I've heard several stories of students that were, held back from that because of how they wanted to dress. I mean, these are things that we need to push at a national level. It's not just local. And some of the students that it's happening to are seeing it as local, but it's happening all over. And it's something that, again, we as board members, at a national level, we can address and help address to get things pushed through, so they're not having to make a choice of showing who they are and having to be able to graduate and walk with their class. So there's some things that we can provide. Thank you.
Awesome. Appreciate that, David. Jacinto, here in the Austin ISD, we've been members of CUBE, the Council of Urban Boards of Education, for years. Tell us, what are some of the benefits of membership in CUBE, and or how urban does a district have to be part of CUBE?
I don't think a district has to be very urban, other than noticing and acknowledging, right, that there are urban traits that are coming to their school system. An increase in students of color, an increase of everything that David and Mondo just spoke about. I mean, I'm sorry, because right now David got me in my feelings talking about that graduation ceremony and not being able to wear their regalia, right? So in CUBE, I recall, well, I guess let me give you the technical answer as to why people ought to join CUBE, and it's what's on our website, which talks about supporting school boards through professional development, legislative advocacy, what Mondo was talking about, and other resources to address today's urban challenges. Now, I think that the adaptive one is what Mondo also just talked about, is network, and the ability to be able to call on someone and measure your district on how far advanced are we. There are some districts that are out there. One of our CUBE member districts, my boy, Dr. Steve Gallen III, they just passed an anti-racist curriculum. Everyone on the CUBE network is seeing that right now, right? Those are conversations that we get to have now locally, like, wait, hold on, we thought maybe we were advanced. We have a racial equity policy. We've got an equity division. Well, now Miami goes and ups us again in having an anti-racist curriculum, right? So those are the things where I now get to gauge myself as one trustee in Fort Worth, Texas, to say, wow, there's a heck of a lot more that's going on. And the reality is that the sky is the limit. And if I don't know what was, then I don't know what is another one of those lines from my boy Ricky Clark. The reality is we get to check on one another. We get to support one another. And CUBE is the first conference aside from MASBA that I attended where race was at the center of the conversation. Heterosexism, sexism, all the isms were on the table, and there was professional development surrounding those conversations. While I had already kind of gotten accustomed to maybe walking in and being like, oh, this really may not relate to me, I don't think that was the case at CUBE. We realized real soon that there was going to be a lot of real talk in what was about to take place for our national conversation on education.
Jacinto, tremendous. Appreciate that background. Devin, tell us why our district should be part of the National Black Council.
Well, first off, for every other reason that my colleagues just shared, is the same reason why you should be a part of the Black Council. That connectivity, the connectivity that you get is priceless, right? I could tell you about the research, the white papers, the podcasts, the webinars, which are bonuses, which are great value adds, right? But the real conversation that Cinco just said, we keep it real when we're connected, when we can see best practices and examples being played out right in front of us. And so, I always say, you don't know what you don't know. So if you want to be the best school member you can be, join the fold, connect with subject matter experts on the topics, take that and bring it back to your community and then implement it. So join us if you want to be the best board member you can be. If you're someone who just shows up, rubber stamps, and likes to smile and whatever, don't join us. We don't want you. We want people who actively want to be better. When you know better, you do better, right? And so if you want real outcomes for your students, you want real change for your community and your district, join us. Be a part of our movement.
Awesome, Devin, thank you. Now that we've finished our lightning round, I'll let each of you decide when you'd like to jump into the conversation. Let's talk racism and inequities. What you all have in common is that you lead national organizations for school board members who identify with the values you represent and the issues on which you advocate. Take us to a 40,000-foot view of racism and inequities and your organization's efforts to address these. In what ways are racism and inequities evident in public school governance at the local, state, and national levels? Who'd like to jump in?
Devin.
Don't be shy.
Just I'll go over two issues that the Supreme Court rulings came out last week and which were major victories, not only for our communities, but NSBA took a strong stance on that. And that was a DACA decision that actually addressed over 800,000 DACA recipients. And we're extremely, I'm extremely, I guess I'm grateful to the Supreme Court to make sure to that they address that issue, because it's very heartening in regards to the issue many of these face, and those are people within our communities. And the other was, I believe it was the LGBTQ ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court, and NSBA also took a stance on that. So those are issues that we're trying to address, and I got to give credit to our new CEO and executive director to really take a strong stance in regards to what happened on civil rights and George Floyd. Her statement is on our website, and it was good to actually see that. I think NSBA, with the input and our colleagues on the NSBA board, we're actually going to see a lot more of addressing some of these issues of inequity and social justice issues. And so we're taking the lead on that, and it's good to see that NSBA is in the forefront. And so you could actually go to NSBA News and look at some of the issues. So.
Awesome. Other perspectives on racism and/or inequities that are evident in public school governance?
Well, I guess I'll go ahead and jump in. I think that in order to really have an understanding and to provide you with a truthful answer on your question there, Jamie, is you have to first understand that the inception of public schools wasn't created for everyone. It wasn't created for the board members you see here on this call today. And so you have to have an honest conversation with yourself and understand that from the start, from the jump, you are operating or governing in a system that was not built for probably a majority of the students that you serve and a majority of students that are now in our public schools. So having that honest look and, an assessment of your own district and understanding that this is a structure we operate in and that there is work to do. Work in terms of tearing down these systemic issues, be it hiring practices within our school districts, be it curriculum that's in our school districts, budgeting and setting out priorities. All of these things, board members have a fiduciary duty of having a hand in. Now, of course, you want to work with our administrators and our superintendents, but we have to have a real conversation, right, around understanding that, guess what? We are all governing in a system that has been upholding these inequities for generations. Like Cinto said, this isn't anything new. These have been around for a very long time. Back when my grandmama was there, my great-grandparents were there. And so now I think we're at an opportunity where we now have a huge wave of momentum behind us to actually do something about it. Now, I hate to use the word trending, but now everyone's jumping on it, right? And they now are awakened to seeing the inequities, right? And it's obviously due to the pandemic with everyone being home and not having a whole list of distractions. And it's obviously due to the recent killing of unarmed Black men that we're seeing happening in our streets. And so a lot of this stuff, to us people on the call, this isn't new to us. We've been having these conversations, but now I think the rest of the country is behind us. And this is where I think us board members and other board members on the call and administrators have a real opportunity to take advantage and be able to push down towards taking down some of these systemic barriers that exist within our own schools.
Yep.
Thank
you, Devin. I'd like. I was just, yeah. Thank you, David. One, I think that to directly answer your question, Jamie, is I think people might be tired of me sound like a broken record on the social construct of race, because for me, it always begins with even understanding how race was even designed and formed. That's one. That requires what Devin described an awakening, a level of consciousness, and me willing to be uncomfortable in what that means for me as a human being right here, right now. So the awakening is part of the work. And I think that the evidence is there for those that have Black, brown, and indigenous children in our school systems. The reality is that white students tend to, not always, tend to be much higher than brown students, then black students, and then indigenous students are almost flatlined in the data in our country. So while I know that I learned at CRSS, the Center for Reform of School Systems, it was there where I first seen the numbers that in math and science, I believe it was going to take black children 96 years to close the achievement gap if white students stop performing at that level. And no one's asking for that to happen. We're not asking for white children to stop learning at the level they're at. What we're asking for is the closing of that gap as quickly as possible. 111 years for Latinx children to close that gap. Already we begin to see that that's beyond my lifetime. Those conversations are unacceptable in my mindset, right? And then indigenous children, they're flatline. There is no prediction on when they're going to be able to close their gaps for math and science. And so we think about all the jobs that are to be created, all the works to be done. That's the reason why there's a sense of anxiety from all of these councils in saying, look, you haven't always included our voices at the national school board level. We now also acknowledge and know that NSBA was on the wrong side of history on Brown versus Board of Education, right? So now here we are where we're making things better and making things right by including voices of people that have been marginalized and left out. But the data's been there. And now that there's more and more children of color and more disenfranchised young people that are in the school system, now we're beginning to see the dollars, or have seen the dollars, shifted away from public school education. We've also been seeing how the whole impact of the entire school system, those decision makers, those folks in office, that's the reason why the legislative agenda is so important, that we don't take that lightly, and that we do lock arms as an entire country for public school education to say, quit taking our dollars. Yes, I know and I see that it's majority children of color now, but that's the reality. And I think that the frustration for me is that if people of color don't have an opportunity to fix this and engage, and white people and people of biracial, multiracial backgrounds, if we don't lock arms now, then imagine what your economy is going to look like in the coming years when all these children are walking out of our school systems unprepared. So the inequities have been there. The numbers have been there. My thing is, how many board members across the state and the country are going to delve into that courageous conversation? Well, my friend Sean Lassiter, Leadership ISD, says, how many of you are going to be willing to flex and strengthen your muscle on inequities so that you can get to a really strong place where you can make better decisions, much better informed decisions?
I think us as board members at a national level, we all need to understand that we need to educate people. Because right now, what Devin said, you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of times, people, even in the state of Wyoming, I worked for a gal that actually grew up in Douglas. It's a town about 2-3 hours away from me, about 200 miles. Anyway, she had no idea that there was a reservation in Wyoming. I've got people that live right off the reservation that have no idea what the tribes are about, what they're for. That goes on all over the country. And, and then visiting with some of my membership from back east in the eastern states, I had no idea some of the things that they were doing. And, that they, to be honest, I had no idea that they had treaties. I knew the treaties of the Western tribes, but I didn't realize that they had them as well. So these are conversations that we all need to have and all need to, push forward to, to make sure that, number one, people understand who we are, so that they're not afraid of us, and that they understand that, okay, we've got some work to do to make sure that our students are moving forward and we're not flatlined. That's a sad reality. Good God.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that. We have over 100 persons on the call with us today. We just want to encourage those who are listening to us to type their questions into the questions box. We have one question already from Nikki Whaley asking where we can find the anti-racism curriculum. Are we led to understand, Cinta, that that's the Miami-Dade Public Schools that has come out with that?
That's correct. I believe we could reach out to our good friend, the superintendent out there, and/or, I'm going to put a plug for CUBE. Dr. Steve Gallen III, our vice president. He'll have the whole details for us. And Nikki, we can hook you up like a tow truck.
Tremendous. Appreciate that. Well, let's go to current events. We're interested in asking y'all how it is that your organizations are responding to current events. Before we get to some of, say, this weekend, let's just ask about in general with this pandemic going on. We find ourselves in the middle of a pandemic against which we seem to be ineptly fighting in many places throughout our nation. Tell me, how are your organizations responding and holding up in the midst of this pandemic? How is this year any different from other years? Is it different as a result of this pandemic? Cinto?
Yeah, I don't mind starting just mainly because I'll kind of want to do the plug-in on governance here. We, in Forward ISD, we've begun to work on our constraints, which we call emergency constraints. And I know that our friends at Houston ISD were the first ones to delve into that space. So I think that as board members, we ought to be having those conversations about good governance. And you know, I know I'm one of those that we don't like to hear stay in your lane, but the reality is that there's a lot of work to be done, and it needs to be done at the policy level. And I heard P. Diddy telling Opal Lee from Fort Worth about Juneteenth. It's as if we got the system against the ropes. We can't let the system off, because we know if we let the system off the ropes, it's going to take a long time to even try to ever get them back in that space. So right now, you know, our emergency constraints are focused on equity. Equity is completely embedded in that. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about well-being of children and our educators and families and communities. But I think that that's the plug that I would give, is that as trustees, for those trustees on the call, lean into that work and lean into it on the governance angle. And we'll probably get a lot done during that time.
Thank you, Cinto.
Well, I'll go next. I think in Texas, we're still waiting to see what the commissioner is going to speak to us tomorrow. We actually had a board meeting to update us on some of those issues, and we decided to hold off till we actually get the update from the commissioner and then moving forward. But I think opening, what's going to be, what's it going to look like when we open up next year, and what issues are we going to see? We've already known that we've seen issues in regards to the connectivity, the access to internet. Our district was able to, we took a lead on this, and realizing that we needed to make sure all our kids deserved the same quality product. And so we actually made a $5 million purchase to make sure all of our kids have a iMac, and then a MacBook Air, and then grades 3 and below will be having iPads. And we just approved on the last meeting to make sure our teachers have that same. So we've addressed the issue on one-to-one, and now we're trying to address the issue on access and connectivity, making sure that we do that district-wide, and we're looking at like a smart city, sort of like your city governments or the airport that has the ability for the whole school district to get connected. But then I think most importantly is how do we support our superintendent as well as our teachers and staff. As we know, these are tough times for them, and we need to make sure that we provide the professional development needed to address some of these issues at this time, but at the same time being able to listen and understand that we sort of have to make sure we, you know, mental health issue is going to be one of the major issues that we're going to have to be looking at as moving forward. So being able to lean on my colleagues on this panel and across the country in regards to what they are doing, and how we could share some of those ideas and make sure that we grow together within this for the benefit of all kids.
Tremendous. And let's expand the conversation as well. What about other current events outside of the pandemic as well? For instance, we know current events surrounding the Black Lives Matter movement, events on this Juneteenth weekend, the Supreme Court's decision on Thursday to support DACA, recent events in the American Indian and Alaska Native communities, recent events affecting urban areas. Tell us how it is that y'all are responding, and or what pleas you might have of those who are listening to us as we think through how we all might respond to these events as school district leaders.
Well, I'll go ahead and just start off on this, and I just want to have a comment in regards to the last question. I'll just say this: in terms of the pandemic and in terms of all the issues that are happening right now in our community, don't let them weigh your leadership down. Now is the time where we want to see you become more engaged, become more active, leverage technology. A lot of our state associations, heck, even the NSBA, we've had to leverage technology to still get the work done. So just because you might be quarantined and we're asking you not to gather doesn't mean you still can't get this work done. So utilize the technology. As Lucindo said, let's lean on each other. Let's lean on our subject matter experts and be good governors at our level to be able to make these things happen. Because what we're not seeing at the national level in terms of federal and state is leadership on some of these issues and leadership. So we have an opportunity as board members to be able to do something about it in our own backyard. So in Arizona, we preach local control. And so we understand that local positions, local elections have a tremendous impact on our community and our kids and our economies. And so I would say now is the time to still push forward on a lot of these issues. But how are we responding? Some districts I've seen are passing resolutions, stating Black Lives Matter. And I mean, and these are coming from some conservative districts. And if y'all know anything about Arizona's, pretty conservative. And so, but I've seen some of these districts at least take these first steps, right? And they're first steps, but they're steps. And so I'm happy to see this momentum building. Now we're just going to have to continue to water that seed to watch it grow. And that means that everyone on this call and us as board members have to be able to lead by example, share these best practices. So one thing that we've been really good at with our state association in Arizona and on the Black Council is sharing resources, right? Sharing out resources for anti-racism, curriculum, resources for mental health, specifically for Black children, and even us as leaders. And our staff, as Cito said, we need mental resources as well. We need breaks too sometimes. That's okay. And so we've just been really tried to be the conduit of sharing and connecting people to information and resources during this time.
Awesome, thank you.
For making sure that everybody understands, what's going on. Again, to get these bits of policy into place for our students at the state level, at the local level, to make sure that we are protecting, the brown, the Black, and yellow students. I mean, everybody needs that protection. And I mean, again, the education of the white people, the people, the the Caucasian people, I guess we'd say, that they understand that, they hold a big part of this. If they're allies with us, we can go a lot further than if they're going to fight us every step of the way. So with that, I mean, again, the education and the understanding and resources, again, networking at a national level, again, with everybody on the panel here, I know I can call you guys. If I have a question, if I have a concern, I can contact anybody here. And, again, if they don't know who to contact, or if they don't know the answer, they know who to contact. Thanks.
Awesome. Our next question comes from Chloe Sykes of IDRA, the Intercultural Development Research Association. The question is essentially what it is that our friends can do to help us. She writes, what do school leaders need from policy advocates to be supported in developing new levels of school board member political advocacy in their legislatures and with state agencies? What it is that our friends and allies can do to help us as school board members? Any thoughts on that?
Well, first I'll jump in and say this, and I'm gonna tap in my boy Cito here because I hear the word ally thrown around a lot, but I think the word we're looking for here is co-conspirator. We've all have heard him say that and what that really means. Cito, my brother, can you go ahead and touch on the co-conspirator versus ally for everyone that's on the call, and then we can kind of jump into the question. I think it's a great question, but for me, it's going to come down to education and training among other things. But I really want my boy Cito to break that down between ally and co-conspirator. I see his video just paused. Oh, perfect timing. Perfect. Well, okay. Why has his video? Oh, there he goes. There he goes.
Sorry, the wind was getting pretty bad in my area. Yeah, allies, good. You serve a purpose. Allies will say, I'm with you. I want to support you. I want to be there for you. Co-conspirators, you infiltrate systems with us. And when we infiltrate systems, we infiltrate knowing that there's a battle taking place because there's people who want to keep the system the same way that it has been. It benefits certain groups, it benefits certain people. And in reality, there's other folks who just like to stay comfortable. And so doing anti-racist work is very uncomfortable for a lot of people, and it makes people around you very uncomfortable. So co-conspirators means that if you're biracial, you're white, you're a person of color who's just coming to consciousness, we got work to do. And for those of us, because most of us are elected, some are appointed, we operate with this mindset that our window is narrow, and so we sit in a time with positional power and influence to be able to do some work. Does that help you out, Devin?
Yeah, perfect. No, that's perfect. 'Cause I think that's what we really need is co-conspirators to really move this needle forward. And so to that question there, what can our folks do? Well, they can become co-conspirators, right? Take that next evolutionary step in mindset to help other board members tap into that full potential needed to really, have an impact on our students.
I guess for me, one of the most important things, right, when we start seeing this, we're starting to get more people aligned with us and hopefully becoming co-conspirators, that we don't need to be in silos anymore. We can grow together. They want us growing, they want us to continue to be fighting against each other, and we can grow in silos and really have a cross-cultural understanding, a mutual respect, and from there we could really grow society and what we can do to make it better, not only for kids of color, but to make it better for all kids, to have a better understanding of where we came from and us having a better understanding where they came from. And let's grow together in a great way for society to be, a lot more loving and caring. So.
I think creating a culture in the United States, in our nation, creating the culture that we're all here together, and that we understand that we're not all the same. I don't operate the same as anybody on this panel. I mean, there are some things that I do that are completely different. I think one thing that people need to understand right now is it's an election year. If you see somebody coming up for election, make sure you understand how they stand on these issues and where they stand, so that again they can become a co-conspirator if we put somebody into place that can push the legislation forward to make sure that all students are taken care of, not just brown or black, but all students can be taken care of.
Awesome. Speaking of that, the next question comes from Dr. Phil Gore and is related. It has to do with the closing of gaps, which we've spoken of already during this conversation. His question is, what specific governance actions should school boards consider to improve learning and to close gaps? So all of you represent organizations that advocate for Latinx students, for Black students, for American Indian and Alaska Native students, for those who are from urban areas which tend to have a higher concentration of socioeconomically disadvantaged students. What specific things can all of our friends who serve on school boards throughout the nation do from a governance perspective to help close gaps?
So if I may, I'm gonna go ahead and get started on this one right quick. What I believe has to happen is, one, a gathering and a common language within that boardroom with the superintendent. There has to be a common language on what equity is, because I still hear a lot of board members use equality and equity with the same background, same meaning for them. They're not the same. So there has to be a unified understanding of what that is. I'm glad it's a question from Dr. Phil Gore. I love talking to him about research and data. I lean on him for that. And the other part that comes with that is these may seem simple, but they're really not, because I see time and time again how board members and superintendents shy away from disaggregating the data. Not only disaggregating the data, but then also presenting the data and putting that out for everybody to see. Like, it is a super uncomfortable conversation to say, if I've been on the board 10, 15, 20 years, how much have I moved the needle? And in a lot of our school systems, the needle's been moving backwards. That's not a comfortable conversation. So common language, disaggregate the data, be real with yourselves on that data, and then also probably the overarching theme is a lot of professional development. The research, as Dr. Phil Gore knows, we don't have to do that much PD. And even if we do have to do that PD, we have so much we have to choose from: finances, law, governance, all these other things. And the last thing that typically wants to get touched is the conversations about race and equity. And so those are the conversations that we're seeing right now in our face. We can't shy away from anymore. The demographics have not been changing, they've already changed. And so governing teams and superintendent teams that aren't ready to delve into that, lean into that, you're not going to get to closing those gaps if you're not willing to have that courageous conversation. And I'm not just talking to my friends that I say are white brothers and sisters. I'm also talking to our unconscious Black, brown, indigenous, Asian, all the other ethnic groups, biracial. I'm talking to those folks as well. That this isn't just a black versus white or people of color versus other groups. This is a conversation about levels of consciousness. And what are we going to do right here, right now, to get policies in place to target those data points and actually get significant change on our part?
One thing that I would say, stop making excuses. One of the most important things is creating a culture of high expectations without any excuses. And you have to create accountability at all levels, whether it's you at the board, your superintendent, or your teachers. You got to create that culture of high expectations and making sure that there's no excuses for that, but that, you know, the issues are being addressed which need to be addressed. And I'm proud to say within that mindset that we've changed our district. We've gotten pushback, but at the end of the day, when you're seeing student outcomes being, you know, coming the way they are in our current community, that's what gives me pride, and it's not excuses on some of those issues. So
and I think making sure again that Mondo hit it perfectly on the head. It just, you know, making sure that our students are held to a higher standard, to that high standard, so that they understand that, you know, you can't live in your own little community your whole life. You're going to have to go somewhere else to make a living, possibly, you know, that not all of us can do that. So again, holding our board members, our fellow board members at the local, state, and national levels to that fire to say, we got to do this. You know, and again, the parents, a lot of parents, you know, and in our district, we have some parents that just want, you know, they want everything to be the same so that they understand the rules of the game, and, you know, they don't want to have to push their students. But we know as educators and leaders that we have to push our students to attain higher levels of education, number one.
I think, and I'll just piggyback on what everyone said, because I agree wholeheartedly. And the first one is to actually believe that our students can actually do it. Believe that your students can succeed, right? That's the first thing, period. Stop making excuses. And there's a difference between acknowledging the barriers that exist and making excuses. There's a difference between that. You can have two separate conversations on that. But first, begin with what my boy Cinto just said here. Ask for the data. Most board members don't ask for the disaggregated data. They don't know how to. Or maybe there might be some tension there with superintendent and that data is delayed, right? But unfortunately, these inequities can no longer be delayed. It is no longer a negotiable item. You need that stuff today to be able to start the work. You need to be able to close that gap, because then once you have the data, you can target, as Cinto said, policies around addressing those issues. And I mean policies up and down the board. I think having culturally sensitive and relevant curriculum is going to be key. I think ensuring that our students have access to the same high quality early college access programs are going to be key. I think diversity and bringing in staff that looks like your students is key. All those play a significant factor in student achievement. And so I recall a conversation here with some board members in Arizona who wanted to lower the age of the dropout rate, high school dropout rate. They wanted to lower the age down to 16. You know, I've had conversations with board members who wanted to, you know, talk about how D, you know, they want to keep that D, the letter grade D, as passing. I said, you know what, that's a wrong mindset to have for your students, right? As David said, you don't want them just stuck here in your back. If you want more for your community, you got to be able to hold the folks accountable. Like you said, put those, you know, making sure that you're having these high expectation conversations, and you're not setting these kids up for failure. See, I was one of those smart students in school where I knew, hey, I can just get a D and I can coast. Cool, I'm chilling out a D. You know, kids are very intelligent. They're smart like that. All right. So we have to be able to just, again, be accountable, ask for the data, implement policies, but most importantly, as board members, not be afraid to bring up the conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, panelists. We're in the final 5 minutes of our time together. Let's talk Turkey. When I served on the CUBE steering committee from 2017 to 2020, the NSBA hosted 2 summer equity retreats for all leaders of your organizations. The NSBA has given your organization's funding and staff and slots for presentations at NSBA conferences. They've approved a vision for equity in public education. So my question is, what is your assessment of NSBA's role and efforts in the battle against racism and the battle for public education equity? That's part one of the question, and or if there's anything more that the NSBA could or should be doing. But also, we love our friends of the NSBA board, and we're also aware that they're predominantly white. They'd likely readily admit that they've enjoyed privileges that many of us on this call have not enjoyed, yet you reflect the faces of the majority of the students in many of their districts. How are you and your organizations working to inform them and the leaders of predominantly white state school board associations on issues impacting our communities? Go.
All right, for the sake of time, I'm going to get going, especially since I'm in my final year of being on the NSBA board. What do I got to lose, right? No, I'll be nice. The reality is I can only speak for my year and a half that I've been in that boardroom. I would say this, I think we're projecting vision that if we want school boards to be high functioning entities to produce outstanding results and student outcomes for children, then NSBA has the opportunity to lead in what that looks like. The reality is we just hired our first Latina, Ana Maria Chavez, as our executive director, CEO, who is a phenomenal human being, already coming in with a courageous, mentality, putting out a statement on day one on Black Lives Matter, putting out a statement on DACA, unapologetically so, doing that, knowing that the NSBA board is asking for the most part. Right. And I say for the most part, because I would never say that everyone's ever 100% there. I'm not 100% there. What I believe to be true with what's happening in SBA is that it's the day of reckoning has come in the form of knowing that we haven't really produced the outcomes that school districts and really, in essence, what our children deserve. And I think even the conversation that's happening right now around police and what's going to happen, I'll just throw my final plug into that one. It's that the conversation I think we're not only having locally, are going to also happen statewide, nationwide. The reality is that we have focused so many monies on suppression when there's three pockets to this. I'm a criminal justice major, so I'm going to throw that in for just a bit. These three pockets are actually supposed to be suppression, prevention, and intervention. And in my experience, a lot of school systems, not only around the state, but around the country, reflect that fear around people of color and marginalized communities that we need to over-police and we need to militarize. And so I know that's extreme, but that's my lived experience. And so me bringing in that mental model and that mindset into a room, to me is significant because one, I have to have the courage to say that out loud, two, to stand and speak in my truth, and three, to not bow down to what I know is a reality of that I saw too many young people incarcerated and too many young people in coffins. That trauma I take with me into every board setting. And I think that's the importance of why we got to continue to diversify. We need more women. We need more people of all the different categories in these seats because those different perspectives bring us to a different level as a functioning body.
So I'll go next. In regards to our advisory capacity, especially the NBC, AIAN, and the National Hispanic Council, I think what we're seeing is a growth mindset within not just our colleagues on the board, but the overall organization. And I think our ability to address some of the issues that are coming at us, whether it's the Black Lives Matter movement, the LGBTQ Supreme Court hearing, or the DACA decision, we're leading in that area. And thanks to, like Tuzo had said, and I'm sure everybody will compliment our next CEO or our new CEO, which is hitting the ground running. And I hope she's able to share some of the issues that we're trying to address in regards to NSBA. But it's extremely exciting. Me and Cinto were talking the other day in regards to what's going on right now and what we're actually seeing. A lot of this work, we were having these discussions about 4 years ago at a MASBA conference in McAllen, and to see the growth that has happened within MASBA and within NSBA and TASB, it's exciting to see. And for me, let's not have silos anymore. Let's work together and let's address the needs of every student and make sure that we create those high expectations and we see them shine and rise. My favorite quote is by William Butler Yeats, and it talks about education is not a pill to be filled, but a fire to be ignited. And so how can we help ignite a fire in each and every one of our kids so that way they could be the best and brightest that they can be to contribute back to
Thank you,
society.
Mondo. Thank you, Mondo. We're in our last minute. Brief thoughts?
Well,
Well,
I'll
I
just
think-
say this, that, go ahead, David, go ahead.
Good, Devin, you're it.
I'll just say this, that I think for the first time personally, I feel that the NSBA has a real opportunity to live up to its moniker, the leading advocate in education. And that's not to say that they weren't, working hard towards that in the past, but I really feel that with the core group that we have, with the momentum that we have of everything happening in our country and the leadership of Ana Chavez, we really have an opportunity to be the leaders in education, to be the key advocates. And so I don't take that responsibility lightly. I'm sure I could speak on behalf of my brothers on the call and the sisters that, hey, we're not there just to be tokens. We're not there just to be brown and black faces. We're there to educate, motivate, and activate others to take action. Take action. Now is the time. And so I see NSBA playing a huge role in setting the tone nationally for how we move this needle forward. Because I tell you what, equity, anti-racism work, what have you, that's no longer negotiable. It's not an option. You're either on board or you're not. And that's sort of the mindset I think that we have a real opportunity to lead from.
I think NSBA has come a long way, and we moved the needle forward quite a bit, based on first time I was on the council or the caucus at the time. So, and my seat is here because of equity. And so again, we are moving forward. We're getting people in place, and all of us are educating our fellow board members on the NSBA board of directors to, let them know that, again, we're not just token people. We're here to make a difference. We're here to help you understand better how to serve the communities that we work in.
Tremendous. 15 seconds of closing each. How's that for deal? Last thoughts on your hearts and on your minds in 15 seconds each. Go for it.
Let's keep moving.
Okay, thank you, David. Mine is we've got our CUBE conference, which is going to be virtual. If not, I would have invited you in person to meet us in Houston, but virtually you'll see us September 22nd through the 24th. Hope to see all of you there, my friends.
Final words.
Well, I would just like to thank everyone who attended this panel today. And I would say that we're at a very pivotal moment in history, and we have a real opportunity to do something about it. And in 50 years, when they look back at those who took action, you want to be one of those people that said, hey, I was right there on the front lines. So I encourage everyone to please look into our councils, become members, become active, and let's change our communities and our schools for the better.
Thank you, Devin.
David, you want to go or you want?
I will. Again, I think Devin hit the nail right on the head. I always get that backwards. Anyway, we need to, again, keep moving forward, keep understanding where people come from, learn the culture of the people that you're working for. Please, again, this is an election year. Make sure you understand where your people are going to, where they stand, and where you want them to be, and where you want your students to be. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Mondo, you get the last word.
I just want to thank everybody. Seeing MOSBA grow to what it is today and being able to participate in NSBA and TASB gives me a great pleasure to make sure you jump on board in regards to our councils. It's important for you. You don't have to be the person of that color. You just have to make sure you have kids and you have a heart for addressing those kids' needs. And so that's what we're here for. We're here for us to grow together and make sure that we have that cross-cultural understanding and mutual respect, because we've got a lot of work to do, and we got people on this panel that are doing that work, and we need more of you all to join us on this work and on this journey.
Thank you to all of our panelists. We thank you. As our panelists turn off their cameras and their microphones, it's my great pleasure to welcome the new Executive Director and CEO of the National School Boards Association. She previously served as CEO of Girl Scouts, the world's largest leadership organization for girls, and as Executive VP and Chief Growth Officer for the National Council on Aging. She now leads our national organization and its advocacy efforts for 90,000 locally elected school board members and the 50 million students we serve. Welcome, Ana Maria Chavez.
Hola, ¿cómo están? Hello, it's great to see everybody.
Bienvenida.
Hello. It's great to see. I love listening to the conversation. You inspire me. You keep me going every morning. I'm in my, I think, 4th week now. I'm still counting the days, but I will tell you that just getting to meet Devin, David, Armando, Cinto has been a blessing. This is the 5th legacy organization that I've come into. And anytime you sort of enter an organization that's already 80 years in action, you clearly know great people. You're standing on the shoulders of people who've come before you. And these are the people, right? And I'm so grateful for their leadership. There's a lot of work to be done, though. And I'm hoping that those on the call today hear the clarion call. This is our time. This is our moment. The gentleman just spoke so wonderfully about, if not now, when. And my mother's been saying that for 50 years. So yeah, basta, vámonos, right? It's time, and our kids need it. All kids need it, regardless of their backgrounds. They need us. And so I need your support, because this is not my organization. This is your organization. I'm just there to facilitate the issues that are important for our communities. And if I don't know about it, I can't help. So I'm going to give you my email. It's achavez at nsba.org. achavez@nsba.org. You send me an email at any time. Aquí para servir. I'll also give you my personal cell phone number. This is a family. This is a community. We have to do it together. There's no hierarchy. Let's just get it done.
Tremendous. Ana Maria, welcome to the NSBA. We look forward to working with you. We're going to turn over to Ty G. Jones of the Texas Caucus of Black School Board Members for some closing thoughts. Trustee.
Hey, good afternoon. This was a great conversation. I truly enjoyed it. I want to affirm the national leaders for leading in these turbulent times. Devin, Cinto, David, Armando, I know each one of you guys personally. It's been great listening to the comments. One thing that stuck out to me most is accountability. We have to ensure that our administration and our board members are aware of the accountability system to ensure that we can put metrics in place to make sure that our kids are first and that they're getting what they so truly deserve. So again, thank you guys for the great call, and thank those who are participating. Ms. Chavez, thank you for your leadership, and we look forward to making things great.
Tremendous. To all who've joined us for this last Monday noon webinar of our series on good governance in the midst of crisis, thank you for your support of our public schools, and thank you for championing the work of our NSBA national councils and co-sponsors of this conversation series. We'll look forward to more great programs with you in the fall. Have a great day.
Take care, everyone.
See ya.